I don't know what all we need to say, but we're starting the assembly of the input drum for the 4L60 that goes in Casey's Toyota pickup. We've got everything cleaned up, new pistons, new lip seals, Sonax intermediate piston, bonded 3/4 piston installed, high rate return springs, and we're gonna start reassembling it. So anytime we assemble anything, we always soak all of our clutches. Some guys do, some guys don't. Do whatever you want to do, but I like to keep everything oiled up. It needs to be oiled up whenever it goes in the transmission anyways, so might as well start here. Start by putting the overrun clutches in, overrun pressure plate. Our sprag is already installed, new sprag, double race, 29 element sprag. Everything's new inside of it, so we're just gonna drop it in. Put the forward clutch wave steel in and start putting the forward clutch in. Some guys try to do it by putting all the clutches in and then setting that in. We don't do it that way, but to each his own. We've already stacked this drum once and checked our clearances, so we're not going to get too deep into that aspect, but at least get all of our forward clutches installed. Forward clutches are in. Put in the forward clutch snap ring. Move to the 3/4 clutches. Start with the pressure plate. Work our way up. I feel like there's a lot of clutches in this one. Put our top pressure plate in. Here we go. Start by, I guess we ought to tell you what the hell we're working on. First off, Casey Crider's 4L60 in his 93 Toyota pickup, going back together. We've already put new bushings and new bearings and everything. We're just show you guys a short amount of the assembly process. Start with putting the rear planetary carrier in. Then we're going to put the rear planetary in. What you guys seen in the original video, the one that came out of it decided to go kaboom. So here we go. And we're going to start putting some clutches in. First set of clutches going in, we're going to put in a goofy looking steel and start putting the lower reverse clutches in. Same thing as before, everything's oiled, everything's clean, ready to go back together. Once all the lower reverse clutches are in, we get the center support installed. Typically, you have a spring right there. This time we're putting a case saver. working our way up. And new sun gear bushing, Beast heavy duty sun shell. Using bearing type Ford clutch hub, reaction shaft. Bearing goes on the back. And just like that, we were in there. Next up, we're going to put our fun little yellow snap ring in. See if we can do this without dropping the shaft on the first time. That is the Planetary system. We've got our input drum loaded and ready. We're going to sit it in for now while we're working on the reverse input drum. Let it hang out in there and we'll get back with some more. All right, guys. Back here working on Casey's Toyota. One of the biggest things that we see in 4L60, it doesn't matter what application it's in, Toyota, Honda, Chevy, hell, it don't matter. Whatever you're putting a 4L60 in, reverse input drum, this is where your intermediate band, 2/4 band, however you want to say it, rides. We're really bad about this surface bowing, so anytime we're building one, we use a 1.5 inch thousandths filler gauge, a little bitty guy. Can't get much thinner than that. Use a machine straight edge on the side of the drum, and we check for surface flatness. If that gauge has drag all the way across, then that drum is flat. If it's not, you'll be able to stick her in there and just give her the wiggles, and that band will never ride. So, with the drum flat, bushings in place, drum clean, we are ready to assemble. We're gonna get some seals on our piston. Make sure your seals are going the right way. Put them in. It don't work. This piston's already had the orifices installed and been drilled on both sides. Helps bleed the oil off evenly. Got our 2 seals on. Small amount of assembly gel, and we'll see if we can't put the piston in there. Never force the piston. If it don't fall in, don't force it. Some guys frown upon using this as a lip seal installer, but the hell with those guys. If you're careful and you work it, keep rotating your piston as you go. Make sure that your seals are nice and free. Got to be even too. You can't get that dude all cattywampus like that, or it'll never go in the hole. Yep, got her cattywampus.
It's so slippery.
Hold on. My hands are slick. Sometimes you gotta wipe your fingers off, they get too slickery. Just like that. She should fall in. When it's installed right, you should be able to not rock it and it should spin freely. If you rolled your seals, it won't spin. Put on our return spring. These are snap press. Put our snap ring. Now we are ready to assemble the drum. Like with everything else before, we're using some very nice and oily clutches. Your goofy plate goes in first. The goofy plate always has to be installed cone up. Don't put your goofy plate in backwards. It won't work right. That goofy plate is also known as a Belleville spring or a pressure spring. Tons of different names. Today we're going to call it the goofy one.
Belleville spring.
Yep. Some people call it a cushion still because of the amount of cushion it gives the clutches as it applies. Instead of being a slap as the two plates come together, it has to take up the taper of the spring or of that plate, has to flatten as it comes on. So, get our snap ring in here and ta-da, she's on there. Now then, we're gonna take our time to put our 2/4 band in. We've got our servo in. We do a few tricks inside of the servo. Not gonna dive too deep into it, but we do use the Sonax kit and we do use a hardened pin and some other stuff. We've got our 2/4 band. We're using a Kevlar band with a heat treated end on it. That's really a big important thing on 4L60s. These guys like to blow that end out of that band. So we're gonna get our band in place. We're gonna get her on the anchor. Get her all squared up there just like so and walk our anchor in. At this point, you'll notice we got just a hair bit of gap on the band. Pretty important. Need to be able to rock that drum. So we'll get our pump in and make sure that everything works how it's supposed to. Next thing we're gonna do here, and I'm a weird about my transmissions. I like to make sure that our end clearance is set where it's supposed to. We've already taken our time and made sure our thrust washer and selective washer underneath the reverse input drum are correct. But we want to know that our washer on the back of our pump is where it's supposed to be. We'll put these two on here. Same thing as earlier. Need to check and make sure that we've got plenty of clearance between that gauge and the washer. I like mine to have around 5/6 thousandths, if that. You can get it too tight. Too tight is a bad thing, but I like to keep mine a little on the thin side, so. Make sure you're only using one of those. I did it again. Right there, we can get our 4 thousandths underneath it. As long as we can't get the 6 under it, we should be perfect. And we cannot force this, you can barely force the 6 under it, so we are right on the money. We'll get the pump in and tighten down and see how she spins. I like to use a guide bolt. It's actually just an old bolt that I've cut the head off of and called it a guide bolt. Get our new pump gasket in place. put our pump O-ring on. Make sure your pump O-ring is installed all the way. Use a fair amount of assembly gel. Now, if we've done everything right and got our Teflon rings right and got her centered right, she'll sit right in place. We'll get some bolts in it and get her sucked down. Silicone their bolts and put new, or not put new O-rings on. Some guys just don't do anything. I prefer to put all new O-rings on them. The kit comes with all this stuff, so you might as well use it. Set all this to the side. Get some of that trash backed up off the bench again. Seems like we are constantly picking it up. Come here, little turkey. Get the old manual handle out here. And you want to run your pump down as evenly as you can. It's real easy to get that thing a little cattywampus and then nothing works right again. I like to snug 2 bolts down by hand. Give it a spin, nice and smooth. No in-play up and down, and everything rotates. Those of you guys doing this at home, do not use the impact for this. Manual tools. Right? Use an impact, you're gonna break something. Do it right once, you don't have to do it multiple times. Same thing as the back of the pump. Pump body needs to be torqued.
Torque to what?
These bolts torque to 18 foot-pounds. Sonax is gracious enough to include this information in their kits. If you guys use their kits, you'll, grab the wrong one. You'll find it in the instructions, torques for all the bolts in the transmission. We've got her torqued in place. Install our seal retainer. Be gentle with that thing, you can break them pretty easy. Earlier we discussed about the 2/4 band and reverse input drum. This step right here is pretty crucial to that. You look down inside of here and you can see the band right through this opening. You see it right there? Give you guys a little bit of light. See that band right there? She needs to wiggle. If it can't wiggle, you're gonna have problems. Another thing, grab the output shaft. Should be able to spin it. See how that drum's sitting there spinning? That's how you know she's right. Alrighty, we're gonna start checking some of these surface areas, make sure everything's square. We've already dressed our case half. I like to use a homestone during cleaning process and make sure that the case is nice and flat, everything's parallel. We're gonna start getting the rest of our performance pack out, get our wiring harness in, accumulator in, check balls in, start getting a separator plate ready for the valve body. We'll be back soon, guys.